I'm going to start today by saying I am so blessed to work in the school that I am in. I will be the first to say I am not a fabulous teacher because the content is so hard. Hi, welcome back to my channel. I am so glad that you are here. Today I am just here on a Saturday. I am a little bit behind and overwhelmed, and so I'm going to take the day to get things organized. I also have a room transformation coming up on Thursday. We're going to do a football room transformation for Super Bowl Sunday. We're not here on school on Friday or that Monday after the Super Bowl, so we are going to do it the Thursday before. And last year the kids really enjoyed it, so I hope you join me to see how that goes this week. One thing that we just started this week was fractions. And what I am coming to realize is, number one, kids never seem to master fractions in the grade levels before. And what I think it is because fractions is not math that a lot of fifth graders use. And so just like I tell parents, like if you don't use it, you lose it. And I really feel like that's what's happening because, 10-year-olds don't really use fractions that much. They understand like a half. They understand that, a fraction is broken up into pieces. I really feel that they understand that a fraction is a part of a whole. That's not the problem. But when we really start to dig into fractions, they are so overwhelmed and it just doesn't click for them. Like they're just not ready for that. So I always start with going over the vocabulary because they have to understand what questions are asking and when we're talking about fractions, what that means. And so we did do that. We started, by going over a lot of these vocabulary words, finding equivalent fractions, understanding what they are, because that is not part of our fifth grade standard. But for us to continue with fractions in fifth grade, they have to remember these things. So that's where we started. I will say that I had some tears yesterday, and we were estimating fractions. And again, I'm like, this is where I can get on my soapbox about education. Like, why do they need to know this at 10 years old? I agree they need to understand what fractions are and the basics of fractions. I get that. So why do they, this was like the problem. So for example, the question was, would these two fractions added together be greater than or less than 1? And so, for example, like 3/4. They kept saying, well, 3/4 is close to 1 because we think of 3/4 is 75 cents and that's close to $1. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's what we have talked about. And they get that. But if they are given like 3/4 plus 1/5, they have to know that that's actually less than 1 because 3/4 isn't already 1. Okay, they got that. But then if we estimate another way that was in our curriculum and it says 3/5 plus 1/5 equals, they have to give me what it would estimate to. And so it was 1. But they were like, you just said that would be less than 1. Yes, if the question is asked in a certain way, you have to understand that 3/4 is less than 1. And so just getting them to understand that, and like what seems so easy to me is not for them because they don't understand fractions enough because they never use fractions. And so that was extremely frustrating. And this is when I get on my soapbox of, when are we going to stand up as a school together, as a state, and say, we're never going to be successful on the state test because you're going to just change it? When are we going to say, you know what? As a school, this is what we want our kindergarten to know before they leave. And if they don't know that, maybe they need to stay back. And then we go to second grade standards. And we still look at those Indiana academic standards, but we say, what is it that we want these kids to know? And look back at maybe some of those kindergarten standards that we didn't hit. Do we need to incorporate some of those? And start taking those standards and pull out the ones that work for your school and your students. Because I can tell you, I feel like as educators, we are not making, I don't even know how to say it without getting bashed for it. Maybe I say it this way. Our students do not understand basics of anything. For example, back in the day when I first started teaching, we had calendar math, and the kids in primary would come up to the calendar and you go through the days of the week and what's tomorrow, what was yesterday, what's the weather, what's it gonna be like, what can we predict? And you would sit and have calendar math. Do you know how many fifth graders, when we have a story problem that says it happens in a year, that they don't know there are 12 months in a year? They have to ask me. Or that there's 365 days in a year. Like, I know it seems so simple. And is that going to cause them to fail in life? No, but how do our kids not know that there are 365 days in a year and there's 12 months and that month 8 is... We teach them these basics, we go over it, but nothing is done repeatedly. Like, repetition has seemed to go out the window. We seem to think that in education, kids don't have to memorize anymore. Well, they can't remember anything. When do we activate the memory part of their brain? Like, when did we go from, they don't need to memorize math facts because they'll figure it out. They can draw it out. There's all these other ways. And yes, I agree when teaching them math facts and what they are, that's important. But at 5th grade, when we can't do a multiplication problem in a set amount of time because they have to sit and do tally marks or do repeated addition to figure out what 7 times 8 is, like, to me, that's a problem. No wonder why kids aren't learning math. It's so difficult. It takes them forever to do anything anymore because they've never had to master anything. And all the accountability is back on the teachers. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because it's probably teachers watching this, but I love my job. I love my school. And I've had such a supportive admin while I have been at this school. And my superintendent is extremely supportive, especially when it comes to some behaviors and stuff like that. Like, it has nothing to do with my school. It has to deal with education as a whole. And so, every time I have to teach it, I just find it so ridiculous that we have to, I'm looking at my standards real quick. So, we have explain how an author uses reasons and evidence to support claims in a text, identifying the reasons and evidence in which claims. Like, okay, I can go over that. But there's also, taking multiple accounts of the same event and looking at perspective that way. But guess what? There's also another one where not only do you have to have multiple pieces of text, but you also have to include digital sources. And so you have these 3 texts where you're always trying to quote accurately, but we're asking 10 and 11-year-olds to take these multiple pieces of text, read them, analyze them, completely understand them, pull out what the author is thinking in all those words, and then in turn, write an essay and put their own thoughts. And or they have to take nonfiction text and turn it into a narrative story. Like, what is the point in that? Why can't we teach kids comprehension? Like, you know what? If we if we took a major focus in 5th grade to focus on comprehension and how you go back to the text to find the information, then when they're more capable of understanding those standards, then they can apply it and do that in an older grade when they're more mature and their brain's more developed. Like if I gave adults these questions that they have to do, they wouldn't be able to do it. Like they would struggle with that, but we want 10-year-olds to do it. I just find it so crazy. We have so many behavior problems and kids that just don't know how to interact with other kids or adults. Well, you know, we took that out of the schools because now they have to read in kindergarten instead of learning how to share and how to talk to each other and learn the basics of things in a repeated way. And all this accountability is only on the teachers because we don't hold kids back hardly at all. Like, what is the accountability? And school's so hard that kids aren't even trying anymore and they hate school. Like, when are we going to look at these things and stand up as a school, as a whole, and say no more? So as I was talking to one of my friends this weekend about this issue, she's not an educator. She was like, well, this is the stuff that you need to put on your YouTube channel. And I kind of step back sometimes because I don't want it to be a negative space because there's enough negativity in education. However, there has to be a platform to talk about these things. Like open up the eyes of the people in the positions to be able to change those things. Open up the eyes of the public because I'm supposed to take those standards in just 2 to 3 weeks and expect kids to master them. And they might do well while we're doing it, but I also need them to do it in 10 weeks when we take the test. And are they going to remember it because we worked on it for 2 weeks? 2 weeks. Like, that's mind-boggling to me. It's got to change, guys. It has to change because I am supposed to do this for another 20 years. This is year 20 for me, and I'm supposed to do it another 20. Like, I keep asking myself, can I do it? This is my passion. I love teaching, and I honestly cannot imagine doing anything else. I really can't. Like, I love working with kids. Do I lose my temper? Absolutely, I do. Are there days that I just want to give up and I don't want to do it? Absolutely. But that does not outweigh how much I love to work with children and I get to impact them. And that always comes back to me when my other students from 20 years ago still reach out to me. Like, that is powerful. And I love that. And I really do feel like God has put me in this position, and he's not really opened doors in any other ways for me. So I really feel that I'm supposed to stay here. But when I am still going over basic stuff that they have been doing since kindergarten, and they still don't do it automatically, it makes me want to scream at the top of my lungs. Why are we? I know money is attached to that test, but I can almost guarantee that if we would go backwards a little bit, and just rethink the standards that we think are most successful for our kids, they would improve on that test because they're mastering nothing right now. They're being taught so much, but mastering nothing, remembering nothing. And that is where it has to change.